Why are women called gold diggers, but there's not a name for men who only date attractive women?
Does this really have to be explained? Oh dear. So, most men typically only date those that they are attracted to. That's called normal. Some women will date a guy whether or not they're attracted to him or not, specifically because he has money. And that's why they are called gold diggers.
Welcome to The Wall. In today's video, we'll watch a woman share her explanation of why men choose to stay single. According to her, it's not due to personal decision or reflection, but because men today don't have the courage to approach a woman and, in her words, they're effeminate. I'm not asking for anything more than your like. It really helps boost the content. Drop a comment with your experience and wisdom. We always pin the best one for the community. Subscribe, and without further introduction, let's begin.
I'm just going to talk about this comment that was left on one of my videos, and there's quite a few men that leave similar comments to this and this proclamation that, this is why men are staying single. And this is obviously not all men, but there is a reason why men do this. And the reason that men say I'm staying single, which in other terms basically means I'm also willing to have a string of hookups that mean nothing to get my own needs satisfied, is that the reason that they do this is because they are not willing to face themselves. Any man that says, I'm staying single is because they do not want to be in a situation that is causing them to face parts of themselves that have been denied, that have been repressed, where they are not taking accountability for the way that they show up in relationships. And obviously, if they're not in relationship or opening themselves up to the right person, they're not going to have this mirroring. And so by isolating and saying, this is why men are staying single, it's just basically another way of saying, I don't want to face myself. Because unfortunately, in Western society and sort of in the modern world, men are becoming apathetic. They're becoming more feminized. And when wounded feminine energy shows up in men, it causes them to lack accountability, to not want to take responsibility, to be flighty, to not commit to things, which is automatically a massive turn-off to women that are in a healed feminine energy. And so the sorts of women that they would actually, thrive in relationship with, they're not attracting anyway, because they're not opening themselves up to the possibility that actually they're the ones that are responsible for the type of women that they're actually pulling in the first place. And so it becomes this vicious cycle. But when men say, that they're staying single as an act of, trying to control their circumstances, the reality is underneath that, they're feeling very much out of control. And because they don't have a language for communicating, what's going on underneath, because no man that is in a healed masculine energy is going to make this proclamation and decide that he's going to be single for the rest of his life.
Stop it. Get some help.
I've always wondered why women believe that every decision a man makes is emotional, when in reality, men tend to be very direct with what they say and do. I've always said that personally, I don't like seeing a man alone, because I believe that when a man does things right for himself, it's hard for him not to find a good partner. Now, this woman claims that any man who chooses to be alone does so out of fear or lack of options. But many times these are men who have already been through too much drama, who have lived through disastrous divorces, and who now simply want to build a peaceful life for themselves. Being in a relationship has its benefits, yes, but many people ignore the risks that come with it. A lot of men have already experienced more losses than gains, and that's why they choose not to get involved again, all to preserve their peace.
Because when you look at the way that obviously masculine energy thrives in life, it is to build, it's to continuously have something to move towards, to build some sort of legacy for self, and to feel as if they're creating a foundation, and building something. And so when you're saying, I'm cutting off my own growth, which is obviously what comes from being in a relationship anyway, they're automatically showcasing they're not actually in their masculine. Because to get to the end of your life and basically look back and say, I worked a job that was okay, that paid the bills, sat on my own money so I didn't have to pay anything, for women, and, got to the end of my life with a string of hookups. You look back at that as a legacy for a male, and the level of regret that would come with that is not going to feel good. So if a man makes this proclamation, then this is what he really means. And Emotional fulfillment in life comes from the depth of intimacy we have with our partners, with the people that are closest to us. And when we cut ourselves off from that and the possibility of exploring that, we don't live an emotionally fulfilling life. We live a life that's filled with surface level distractions, surface level projections that don't actually lean into anything of depth. And so when a man says this, he's likely very much in his feminine, in an apathetic energy where he doesn't want to commit to things. And so within a relationship, he's not going to take accountability. This is obviously very different for a man that chooses to stay single until the right person comes along and works on himself in the meantime. This is an attribute of a healthy masculine male and a man that's able to concentrate and focus his energy in such a way that's actually going to be really supportive and conducive once the right partner shows up or once he's ready to take that step with the right partner. And this is the sort of dynamic and mentality that actually breeds and calls in soul connection as well, because the man is anchored into his masculine energy as opposed to dismissing the concept of relationship altogether, which is naturally a byproduct of being very wounded. And soul connection in and of itself can only come in when you are truly connected to yourself, whether you're male or female. So if you don't have a deep understanding of, your own psyche, the way that you operate, of your own triggers, where you're not taking accountability and reconciling that internally, you're not actually in a position to attract in what would be like a deep soul connection anyway. So all of these things are interconnected. They all play into one another. But the difference is that when you are connected to self, you see the mirroring and the divinity in others. When you are not connected to yourself, you see through the eyes of separation, of somebody else wanting to take from you, as opposed to being with an open and generous heart that actually allows you to feel the fullness of what a relationship can actually bring for you.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
A very nice speech where all the blame is placed on the man, but she forgets that a relationship involves two people. It's true that the man builds, puts in the effort, and lays the foundation of that relationship. She's right about that. But it's also true that today's man isn't asking for anything different than men in the past, while today's woman is no longer the same as she used to be. Many men, when they get married, take on a mortgage and a life of hard work, but they face the risk of losing everything in the event of a divorce. Let's remember that over 80% of divorces are initiated by women, and many of these women want a provider who pays for everything, yet they don't do acts of service for their man. They don't want a coffee date because they consider it cheap, and they often date one or more options at the same time. Add to that the height requirements that automatically exclude millions of men. So then, how can they expect men not to shut down, not to focus solely on their own path, or not to prefer casual relationships? The current system, largely shaped by women, ends up discarding nearly 50% of men right from the start.
Women.
There is a reason why men do this.
And what reason would that be?
The reason that men say, I'm staying single, which in other terms basically means I'm also willing to have a string of hookups that mean nothing to get my own needs satisfied.
I just love these type of arguments. They are so much fun.
The reason that they do this is because they are not willing to face themselves.
Oh, is that what they mean? Most men usually aren't known for speaking with double meanings. They usually say exactly what they meant, but do go on.
Any man that says, I'm staying single is because they do not want to be in a situation that is causing them to face parts of themselves that have been denied, that have been repressed, where they are not taking accountability for the way that they show up in relationships. And obviously, if they're not in relationship or opening themselves up to the right person, they're not going to have this mirroring. And so by isolating and saying, this is why men are staying single, it's just basically another way of saying, I don't want to face myself.
Fascinating, but yet it doesn't seem to be based on any sort of logical thinking whatsoever. It rather seems to be coming from an emotional place called the projection section. And that's why I love these sort of arguments, because if we're to, in the spirit of equality, say that women do the exact same things for the exact same reasons, and that's why a lot of women choose to stay single, well then, I imagine there would be a lot of individuals that would be very upset about that. Because some individuals do like staying single because it's peaceful and to avoid toxic behavior. Nothing more than that.
Like I said, the Garden of Eden has a bit of everything. It's not just about men. There are also women who choose not to have a romantic partner. And it's not like there's a large group of women out there with traditional values who truly want to build a family. Many want the benefits, but not the responsibility that comes with a relationship. They don't value the man, they don't take care of him, yet they expect him to give everything. They're neither submissive nor respectful, and still demand commitment. So it's not just about emotional decisions. It's that choosing well out there isn't easy. Even so, I encourage men to focus on themselves, improve, and then find a woman who truly values them. Because I understand that the family is under attack, and the country needs good family men. That's what brings prosperity, but it's also true that, nowadays, men don't have it easy at all.
I have been single my whole entire life, and people look at me like I am an ill disease-ridden child every time I tell them that. They're like, "Are you okay? What is wrong with you?" Nothing's wrong with me, honey. I had a very bad choice in men back in the day, and that was because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I just thought I wanted a quick relationship that would end in happily ever after. It just ended me being in situationship after situationship, treated like shit. So it was basically a shit-situationship. I would like to coin that word. Shit-situationship, okay? And it led to men walking all over me. And what I've learned in the later part of my 20s, which is so horrible to say, but it's growth, it's maturity, is that I have learned so much about myself and what I want and what I can bring to the table, so that the next time a man wants to take me seriously, he has to go through a fucking list. He has to land in a helicopter, roll out the red fucking carpet, and give me a million flowers. I have not come this far in a healing journey to just let anyone open me back up. So when people tell you they're single, don't get it confused. Doesn't mean they haven't got a roster. Doesn't mean they haven't got a wait list. It just means they're not open for business yet. So ladies, if you're single and you feel like shit, just remember it's your growth journey. Because let me tell you, no one else's son is going to make you as happy as you're going to make yourself. So, moral of the story, just love yourself.
Hey, bro. What? Oh my God!
Something I always say, the one who really has it easy is the Chad, the kind of guy who brings nothing to the table. And I say that because many women, like this one, have already dealt with several men like him. Now, as they approach 30, they start to see the consequences of those choices. What happens then? Their standards go up. Suddenly, the man with good intentions has to fight harder to be with her, as if he's paying for the mistakes of the ones before him. He has to go through her checklist of demands, as if she were some prize that's hard to win. That's what ends up exhausting many men. Because the one who comes in seriously, ready to build something real, has to put in twice the effort just because he's not the guy she used to have fun with. And that's where a lot of men decide not to play that game.
If you're currently single and you feel lonely, please remember it is always better to be alone than to feel alone in a relationship. There are so many more people than you think that are in relationships where they, number one, settled, but also they're the only present one in that relationship. The other person either A, isn't emotionally intelligent enough for them, isn't willing to fix problems, and the other person is just tolerating them, is just not the other person's ideal match, but they just want to make it work, so they kind of just stick around. And I'm not trying to say these things to be negative or pessimistic. Relationships are amazing. Love is amazing. I am such a supporter of being in a relationship, truly. When you're with the right person, it is so worth it. However, this is for anybody that's single and feels bad about it. Why would you ever want to be with somebody where you feel alone in the relationship? You're the only one working on problems. You're the only one bringing up ways to be stronger as a couple. You're the only one trying to solve things, and the other partner does nothing. That's an awful situation. So just remember, even though social media can seem convincing and people can try to make their relationship seem so perfect, unfortunately, most of those people are not as happy as they seem, and you will find your person. Do not settle.
Don't settle. I won't deny that she's partly right in what she says, but she presents it as if she were some kind of prize that has to be earned. On top of that, the idea of the ideal partner doesn't exist. A real relationship is built on two people willing to help each other improve and grow together. Most, if not all, marriages have something that doesn't work. They're two different individuals. They're not going to agree on everything, and that's completely normal. That's why you talk things through, make adjustments, and work things out. But this woman keeps holding on to a perfect fantasy that doesn't exist. And because of that mindset, relationships today don't last. At the first crisis that breaks her idealized story, she walks away. She wants to start over with someone new, or she stays waiting for the perfect prince, only to end up hitting the wall in her 30s, desperate to find a beta provider to save her. But we all know, the wall doesn't forgive.
If I end up in the happiest, most loving, healthiest relationship, married with kids, whatever it is, I can promise you I will still hate most men.
So what is the rational reason behind that?
And that is something that I genuinely don't think will ever change, because there are so many men that treat women so badly.
So the rationale here is because of the actions of some men, they are therefore deciding to despise the majority of men.
If I truly find one that is just like the outlier that genuinely treats me good and treats other women well, you're like, he's just one of the good ones.
One of the good ones. Interesting. That sounds like something else I've heard before.
That's not going to change my outlook on the majority of men and the way that they go about their lives in society.
Is anyone else picking up on the fact that this is the exact same logic that some individuals use to justify racism?
I truly don't care that I feel this way about them, because I didn't create these feelings. They did.
So what they're saying is essentially they can't control their own feelings, nor their reactions to other people's behaviors.
Then they wonder why men prefer solitude. And the reason is clear: to avoid dealing with women like this. These are the same women who choose the Chad, enjoy the thrill, and then blame all men for the consequences of their own decisions. The double standard is obvious. She's not called a misogynist for saying these kinds of things, but if a man were to express the same message, he'd be crucified all over the internet. And what's most concerning is that this mindset is being echoed by many young women. That's why so many men are choosing peace. They step back, focus on themselves, and let women like her crash into the wall. Because we all know, the wall doesn't forgive. We've reached the end of the video, but before we go, here are some questions for you. Are you single because you chose to stay that way? Why does it bother modern women when a man chooses to remain single? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Your support means the world to us and motivates us to create more content. Stay tuned for the next exciting video from the wall.